Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. AJ, thank you for your good evening. And today we are back with one of my tutorial streams about a safety system that has not yet been implemented in the game. For the first time, actually, as you can see it here in this inlay, I want to run some mods that add missing branding especially and some improved signal visuals. Dobry den, CD Radar to you too. And yeah, I've listed the mods here. I will go back to them as soon as we are through the opening sequence. I actually thought I could go through them in the loading screen, but actually it does not really work. Maybe I can move them a bit lower so that we can look at them here at this screen. So mods, yeah, he says, well, it's an experiment. As always, I like to experiment. I collected some of the mods that we have for the Great Western Express Remaster, adding some branding for the trains that are not branded, that are just running around with the color schemes, but not with the brandings on it. So this is especially for the first Great Western trains, the high-speed trains and the network turbos, and then it adds the branding to the D0s for the Heathrow Connect, and it adds some branding for the D trains for the London Underground. Moin, Akura, nice to have you on the chat again. And the improved signal visuals for Transom World 6 by London Midland I have also installed, because it actually makes the signals a bit better readable and better to distinguish between red and yellow especially. So I've listed the mods and the creators. Those are running in my setup today. Let's take them out again, and we are going into Great Western Remastered again, so that we can talk about the British Railways automatic train protection from the 90s especially. Disclaimer should be on because I got the keys from DTG, and today I have mods installed what I usually don't have. You let me know what you think about it, if it actually is an improvement or not. British stuff, yes, we are doing British stuff. Great Western Express timetable 2017, that is the remastered timetable, and here for this D78 stock for the London Underground we have some added decals, especially for the branding, the dynamic lines for the first Great Western Network Turbo, as well as for the high-speed trains, and also for the station signage and for the ticket machines and stuff. You find some more branding that is not in the game for various reasons, and we will run on the high-speed train, and then one run on the class 100 and 802 to see what actually is in the game of this British Railways. Yeah, the D stock is drivables is the area that is through, not really far, but it is drivable. So let's pick one of those services here. Evening run from Reading inside to London. Did I miss something? He says, well, you're missing the service marker maybe. Where is District Line in the game? District Line in the game. Is it not a little part of the District Line too? Between London Paddington and what's it called again? Royal Oaks, and then the next one, as well as Hammersmith and City. And we did not hear the last note of the theme. A 9-car variant of London of the high-speed train with the Class 43 locomotive at the beginning in the first great blue livery. And we start with opening the doors, what obviously the guard would do. It's still enough light for day, I think. Can dim a bit. Yeah, and this thing, this speedometer with those green and yellow lamps, we will look at later with those 3 digits for indications, and those buttons that are not animated here, brakes, it says pass, stop, signal, and shunt, it says under the hinged covers and on. This will be our topic today, and on the 802 train it is actually animated a bit more. Well, you can see this first Great Western logo is typically not on the train as it comes out of the packaging. That is mod, and also those dynamic lines here. This is already on the train, automatic train protection. This is the system that we are talking about today. Cross-country livery on the other platform. I'm just looking if I can find a network, a turbo or a ticket machine. Stuff that we got in the game because of the mod. And what are you reading, is City Radar asking. Yes. We are reading all the way to London Paddington. And it's actually a non-stop run. We can pay a lot of attention to the trains that we're passing and the liveries that we can see on those trains. A rear clear marker here. Going across the switch with 40. This is a Class 66 that does not have anything new from the mods. Another HST coming in. So as we passed the first sign, we can accelerate to 60 and then to 125, and then it is more or less a straight run with 125. Are we going to say hi to the bear? What bear? We can say hi to anyone you like me to, but I don't know what bear you know around here that I do not know. What is the year in this route? Well, the timetable says it is the 2017 timetable. So it's actually before the Class 800 trains, or, well, at the time when the Class 800 trains were still in the tryout phase. The Paddington bear, yes. The Paddington bear should be there. And where is it? Can we find him? Then we will do this. Can do some walk around at London Paddington anyway, to look at all the different things that might be better or might not be better with the mods. Akura, that would be lovely to have Paddington Bear at Paddington Station, yes, I agree. I agree. So what is definitely the case is that you can distinguish the red and yellow signals much better from afar. Especially in this evening light. And getting closer, it is still a bit a problem. But from a certain angle it is really good. Whoosh! That was a high-speed train encounter. What do you think Paddington Bear would be called if he arrived in Germany instead of Britain? Well, had he arrived in Berlin, he would be called the Bear Bear. Obviously. And Akura says, arrived in Bavaria, he would he would have been shot. Unfortunately, that is correct. But only if he had proved to be a problem bear. The Hauptbahnhof Bear is a lame name. That is true. Yeah, I'm afraid German station names are rather boring. Yeah, either boring or weird. Südkreuzbär, ja. Der Gesundbrunnenbär. So what always irks me a bit, if they make trains out of trains with different liveries. And Akura says in Frankfurt nobody would ever wonder about the bear because everybody is after the pink dragon in the station's lobby. Is that so? So when we pass the junction for the Heathrow Connect, then we get the other ones in addition to the trains that we have. Akura says Frankfurt is known for its Bahnhofsviertel, a lot of drug addiction. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you said Frankfurt, because everyone is normally quite happy if they manage to survive a stay at Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof without getting mugged. So don't know what would have happened to our poor bear had he surfaced at Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof. So what did we get the AWS alarm for? Signal is green. Speed limit we can't see. Well, the route in the evening light, I like it. This remaster, in my opinion, is much better than the Schnellfahrstrecke Köln-Aachen remaster. Don't know about you guys, but the SKA remaster has some weird signal visuals, and the Talent 2 got extremely high powered headlights. They are so strong that if you run in a bit of fog you don't see anything but a white wall in front of you. The ZS3V indicators are not illuminated, so you can't see them at night. So, even though SCD radar says correctly, I almost like almost everything. I'm not too crazy about the SKA remaster. And with a high-speed train, we are almost at London Paddington. Soon enough we will pass the Heathrow Connect junction. And then we already have to slow down. It's only a bit more. Here is the Heathrow Connect Junction. This flyover gets the trains to Heathrow. And we're getting closer to Ealing, where we have to start slowing down. A bit off topic, but did you catch pictures of the new EMU for SimRail? No, I did not. Did you? Is it also a PESA EMU for SimRail? I think ASR used something of that kind. So now we can start coasting down to 100. Oh, I don't need to honk here. There's a fence disconnecting us. The Impulse 2 36WED EMU coming to SimRail on the 26th of February already. Yeah, they are actually going crazy with new DLCs. Wasn't there a new route supposed to be released? So, interesting point here at, I think we're at Ealing Broadway, if I'm not mistaken, and you have underground tracks here. As you can see, there's one underground train just going out and going away, and then they pass over this bridge that we can see there. And they have their own platforms at Ealing Broadway. Nowadays, also the Elizabeth line has platforms at Ealing Broadway. If I'm not mistaken. So now we're more or less coasting into London. We should get a Morpeth board for the 50 reduction. That is still to come. The 40 reduction and the 25 reduction we need to know without help. I think it was a Piccadilly line train. I think this is the Piccadilly line that goes there, where I'm not too well informed with the London Underground lines. Still have to research it at some point. Piccadilly runs near, but do not go to Ealing Broadway station itself. Ah, I see. Then I don't know which line it is that actually gets you to Ealing Broadway. We, on the other hand, are now passing the sign with the 50 reduction here. Central and District, and not speaking the Lizzie, so it's Central and District that goes there. And nowadays, but not in 2017, the Elizabeth line. More or less taking over the platforms that are served by the network turbo trains here in this DLC. And now we are more or less just coasting in. Already the lines are numbered. We still have a lot of time. There is the Morpeth for the 40 reduction. That does not give us an AWS warning. Here, this bridge with this Potemkin style a building on top of it. Here's the 40. But we are already slow enough. Here, this is the fly under for the Hammersmith and City line, I think, if I'm not mistaken. For the D trains, and there you can see one. Now with the underground decal. Mustn't let my train go alone. Going into platform 5.
We are now approaching London Paddington.
Please mind the gap between the train and the platform, and take care when stepping down from the train.
Yes, and CDRSs, I will never cease to be fascinated by the Elizabeth line, which uses almost every conceivable safety system: ETCS, AWS, TPWS, ETCS, and ZPTC, not to mention ETCS. But the effort is worth something. What the fuck, that is not the D stop. Well, it is. Technically, it is a D train, but not the real D stop that is used there. Just as the 350 D0s are not the 360 D0s that run on the Heathrow Connect. They used the D trains that run as the Class 484 on the Isle of Wight. And we're actually almost 7 minutes early here. And, well, the roof and the lighting in this, at this station, they nailed it. This is what impresses me the most in the remaster, to be honest. This station roof always looks enchanting, no matter what time of day it is. So now we probably have to wait until 1724 until the mission ends. Well, this allows us to walk around a bit. I'm flying. Yes. Here, this is part of the ATP system. A bit like the Zugdateneingabegerät on the expert locomotive, the 101 expert locomotive. But with the lid, they would have to open this to punch in the train data, brake percentages, length, all the stuff, so that the safety system can actually guide you. Unfortunately, I cannot go through the train. So let's see what we can find at London Paddington. Oh, I cannot actually leave this area.
This is a security announcement.
Here I can.
Reminding passengers to keep a watchful eye on their luggage, personal belongings at all times.
Press E to hop.
Unattended luggage can cause unnecessary security alerts.
We can hop here to Cardiff Commuter, to West Cornwall Local, and to the
The
Riviera
train
line.
platform 3
Interesting.
is the 1722 Great Western Railway service to
Ticket
Hereford,
machines got the
calling
branding
at
too.
Reading, Oxford, Hanbury, Charbury, Kingham, Morton in Marsh, Honeybrook, Evesham, Pershore, Worcester Shrub Hill, Worcester Foregate Street, Malvern Link, Great Malvern, Culwar, Ledbury, and Hereford. Will passengers intending to travel on the service please join the train now, as it is ready to leave. Platform 3 for line 1722.
Yeah. Well, I think this is really a great piece of work at this station here. The optics with the roof and the lighting, with the sounds, the announcements, mixed with train sounds, obviously, is one of the modded the Zeros coming in with the Heathrow Connect livery. And I have to admit, with the branding, the mods actually add quite a lot of additional immersion. Looks much better than the white train with the orange doors. No, it does no longer exist, but we are in 2017, right? Did still exist in 2017, did it not?
Passengers intending to travel on this service, please join the train now, as it is ready to leave. Platform 12 for the 1724 Heathrow Connect service to London Paddington, which is ready to leave. The train at platform
Underground I can actually hop
1724 Heathrow Connect
to London Commuter. There is the Brighton line, Bakerloo line obviously, Southeastern High Speed. If we take the Victoria line over to, or whatever line we want to use first, to London St Pancras, or we go to London Euston for the Milton Keynes branch. And CD Radar says it was no, I just want to go out here.
Passengers intending to travel on the service, please join the train now, as it is ready to leave. Platform 14 for the
Oh.
1725 Great Western
I got a
Railway
collectible
service to Didcot Harbour, which is
by mistake. And of course, but London Commuter starts at London Victoria. Yes, I think they put this marker on the entrance to the London Underground because London Victoria, London Euston, London St Pancras, you can all reach by going in the tube. So the route hopping is not limited, at least not limited anymore, to stations that are actually in the same place, but also where you can role play that you can use the tube or another connecting service. So, but this looks extremely nice. The lighting is really spot on. The trains make sense, and I have to admit, even with the mods, it's still It's still a bit more immersive. And this is where the underground trains for the Hammersmith and City and probably the district line are coming in or going out. Nobody can see me. I hop over. I still have to close the door for my train. The district, then it's the circle. I always mix them up. One is the Hammersmith and City, I'm quite sure, and there was a second line.
Which is ready to leave. 24-hour CCTV recording is in operation at this station. The purpose is
Switch the lights. You're leaving your train or not? Aha. From here I can go to the main platforms. And we have to look at the other train that is coming out of the tube tunnels. The darkness sticks to the cars a bit. Then we go to the main platform, and where are we here? Ah, we are here on this footbridge. Then we can actually close our doors. But this is not our train. We arrived at 5, did we know? And this is 8. Oops, and it's the wrong way around. Then maybe we can use this overpath. That was a collectible too, was it not? So which one is ours again? The right one, I think. This is ours, but on the wrong end. At least most people got off the train by now. No, I'm not planning on giving up control of anything. Here you can open the doors. Bistro area. First. Oh, this train is long. More first. And then I cannot go through the engine room, obviously. Back there, hey, so nice to see you. Yeah, we were just admiring London Paddington. What is really a masterpiece in well, remastering stuff. And see, the reason is nowadays it is Hammersmith and City and Circle. Yes, and it is Circle. If it is not District, then it is Circle, because I always mix up Circle and District line for whatever reason. Maybe because they are all going in a circle. Return to main menu. And while the game is returning to the main menu, I can actually go on with my presentation. District is not a circle, yeah, I know. Inspected this Great Western Express, still have to download it. Yep. Get it. It is a really good remaster. We will see how good the other remaster that is coming up will be. The Aachen-Köln remaster did not overwhelm me too much, to be honest. But we can talk about this. This is so long and so slow as a CD reader. I see, maybe this is why I thought it is going in a circle, because you think you are going in a circle when you're on it. Today's presentation about the British Railways Automatic Train Protection, BR-ATP. In case you have not heard about this before, it was a system that was only installed in 2 test lines after, in the 1980s, British Railways faced an increasing number of casualties due to SPAD incidents, and they were looking into a system to prevent this, because the AWS, that was the only safety system at the time, together with the DST and the vigilance as a vigilance system, proved wanting in this respect, and drivers were, well, missing red signals anyway. And so about late 80s, beginning 90s, they decided to implement 2 systems. The one system was implemented on the route that we were driving on from London Paddington here out to Reading. This is where we just started our service here. And then actually the main line goes on via Bath to Bristol. And this was the line that was picked for the Great Western Main Line ATP project, starting in about 1990. All the high-speed trains, class 43 locomotives that were in trains typically at the time, that were classified as class 253 and 254, but the same locomotives. It was also on the 180 trains, at least later then. The what are they called? The other Atlante trains, I think, and then later on the class 800X trains, as we can find it in the game on the 802 train for the Great Western Express. But in the beginning it was a thing for the class 43 high-speed train locomotives. And it is a system actually that they got from Belgium. I need to mute the game, otherwise I will not get rid of the music, as always. More or less the technology that in Belgium they used from a company called ACEC from Charleroi, I think, that they used for the TBL, the Transmission Balise Locomotive Plus systems. And yeah, for a maximum speed of 425 miles per hour. As a test track, and those installations are still in use according to my knowledge and according to what is given an information in the sectional appendix. It is also installed on this alternative line where you can get to Bristol in the northern way. It is on the Heathrow Connect line, as you can see here, and from what you can read in the sectional appendix, it is also on this line here from Reading to Newbury. And still around, the story obviously went on like this. They installed it, they found that it actually worked quite well, but then they calculated the costs, and they saw that the costs per casualty prevented were with about like 14 million pounds at the time, far too high. And so they were looking for alternatives and did not put it into their nationalized system. There was then privatization going on in the early 90s, and this led more or less to the implementation of the TPWS system with the overspeed sensor loops and the train stop system at the red signals. And this was a much simpler implementation, much cheaper, and achieved almost the same reduction in casualties as was calculated for the ATP system. So it was a nice test. It proved successful, but it was never implemented because it was too expensive. It was, as I said, one of two test projects. The other one was the test project run at the same time, or started at the same time, on the Chiltern lines, the Chiltern Lines ATP project. And here you had the network turbo trains that we also have in this DLC, but not on this route, obviously. And later also the 168s and the Turbostars 172 that they used. And they more or less bought the hardware from Germany, from Standard Electric Lawrence, SEL, that bought the cell cap, what is more or less the technology that is used or was used for the early versions of the LZB in Germany. And in other countries you can still find safety systems that are called cell cap or whatever of this product line. And the interesting part is that they used the technology that is used for the continuous train monitoring system like LZB in Germany, but implemented it only on certain parts, and so not continuously but intermittently. So it was more or less punktuelle Zugbeeinflussung mit Linienzugbeeinflussungs-Hardware, built especially here from London Marylebone to what is it called? Is it High Wycombe? And on this route also to Aylesbury, with an exception on a stretch of line that is operated by Transport for London. And in some articles you can read that it actually was used further on to I know Junction here south of Bunbury. I'm not entirely sure. This system, on the other hand, is not in use anymore because of hardware problems. The system was already called for being obsolete in 2010-ish, and so they actually stopped using it a couple of years ago and switched it off, and had to bridge the time until ETCS, or is more or less the heir apparent for all those systems, can be implemented after other implementations on lines where it is more urgent to implement it. So this project, the Chiltern Lines ATP project, does not work anymore, but the Great Western Main Line ATP project and the stuff is still in use according to the sectional appendix. And Warblocks, yes, joining in the midst of the presentation. So nice to see you on the chat and have you with us when we're looking at historic train protection system that is only so ever so slightly implemented in the game. This is from the game, a sticker on the first group blue liveried high-speed trains, automatic train protection. It says this train has been fitted with the ATP system, but it's actually a bit of a lie because it has not in the game. For your safety and protection, ATP operates 100% of the time on all 125 mph stretches of this line between London and Bristol. So they claim. So how does this system work? Inspector says ATP advanced tea and biscuit protection. That is true. Prevents the driver from having to go for a tea and biscuit. Here you see I actually adjusted my model to represent a high-speed train, a class 43 locomotive a bit, and see the radar why they are using a D-stock as a substitute on the Hammersmith and City line is beyond me. So, well, I think this is just because they didn't have a better train to put it there. Our driver in the cab of the high-speed train and our dispatcher sitting in the, or well, let's call her a signaler in Great Britain, because a dispatcher is a different thing there. And communicating typically via the signals, like a double yellow here, preliminary caution. Typically those signals are connected with some circuitry and wiring via signal controllers, interlocking controllers, switch circuit controllers, track circuits, and so on, with some kind of a legacy signaling system, whatever they used to operate the signals, different technologies ever before the system that was actually implemented, typically connected with wires. When they are using wireless communication, then it is to talk to each other, like dispatcher, signaler, and driver. They can talk on the radio. Traditionally, the national radio network, later on some lines, the cap secure radio CSR, to actually encrypt it so that not everyone can actually listen in. And nowadays, obviously, GSMR UK. But that was not the time in the 1990s when the ATP project was started. But from what we can see already, it is only for voice communication between the signaler and the driver, and the train protection is not making use of the wireless connection at this point. What we are using is a thing that we typically know nowadays as balises in ETCS, in Axis, in GNT, TROOP, and all those systems that use intermittent train control with balises. Here it is called a beacon in a tube style, a steel tube type beacon when they implemented the system. So the most reliable information that I found on this system is actually here in the sectional appendix that I listed here on the pages 66 to 70, and then on a document from the British Railway Board that is called a Transportation Research Record 1314, where they described very enthusiastically how this system will be nationalized and built into every line in Great Britain. And CD Radius, that's because the model is a class 404 from the Isle of Wight, just repainted, and the class 404 is a modernized D-stock. Yeah, that is obviously the thinking, and probably better than putting the 1972 Mark II stock there. That was the idea. It is the same family with the D-stock trains, but, well, obviously for an enthusiast not close enough. Our beacon here is connected with a transmitting equipment in line sign cabinet, a special equipment, computer equipment that is connected to the signaling circuitry, and by this to the signaling system that the signaler can control. So this beacon can transfer to the train information about the signal, information about the gradient, information about speed limits, all that we know from GNT, sub-axis, and so on. It is the balise or the beacon that says, hello, my name is beacon number so and so. You can go with 100 miles per hour, but be careful, in 600 yards you have to slow down to 40. And my signal is a preliminary caution at the moment. And then the train says, yeah, thank you so much. I will instruct the driver accordingly. This is picked up by a receiving aerial. Unlike the access balise, it is an active system, so it actually needs to be powered. It is sending its signal all the time, and it is picked up with a passive receiving aerial or antenna, and then processed by a receiver and fed into a vehicle onboard computer. So those are the one of the first versions of the onboard computers that process the train data and the safety relevant stuff. And then it is fed to the driver with driver's controls and indications. And this is so charming about the system that it is not presented to the driver on a display, on a screen, but on those super cute speedometers with those little green and yellow LEDs and 3-digit indicators like on an old radio alarm clock that you might have had. So those are very unique pieces of engineering. And yeah, nowadays obviously this is called an aspect display unit or a human machine interface. Drivers, controls, and indications. Yeah. Also in the loop is a speed sensor so that the train can know how fast it is going. Jurors 182. Hey, Mr. Tiger, it's good to see you. Hope you are well. Thank you so much. I am great, and I hope so are you. And you don't regret that you jumped into this presentation about the British Railway automatic train protection here in the version that is on the Great Western Main Line. Then the computer must have an interface with the brake system, otherwise it could not initiate an emergency brake or a penalty brake to do this. So a lot of the things that we see or that we know from more advanced systems like ETCS Level 1, Axis, ZUP, GNT, and those thingies we can find here as well, but with only relying on the beacons, active beacons, not passive ones, not using the wireless connection for data transfer, and yeah, with those beautiful machines. But we can see where the whole thing is going at this point, 1990. But we can also see why it is not a system that makes sense to keep it up for longer after we have ETCS and all those standardized stuff. What they also can use is loops instead or in addition to the beacons, infill loops, especially if you want to give the train the information that the signal changed. This is, well, a normal problem for all train control systems that only have an intermittent connection between the train and the track, like at the beacons. And if the train has not reached the beacon yet, then the train cannot get the information that the signal changed. If we don't use a wireless connection, then we can either put a second beacon, an infill beacon that gives the train the information earlier, or we can use a loop on the whole line in approach to the signal, like we also know this from ETCS with the Euro loops, to convey the signal. And we're talking here about the Great Western implementation. On the Chiltern Line implementation, the difference was that they did not use beacons at all, but loops at all times, loops, shorter or longer loops, not for the whole track like in LZB, but they just cut it short and used it in the sections before the signals. Yeah, that is the technical aspect of how this system operated. Those are the thingies that were actually used in the cabs, those beautiful speedometer that I like so much. And this is this data entry thing, Zugdateneingabegerät, on the German train would say. Here it is an ATP data entry terminal. So you have this keypad and here a display, more or less like on an old pager, where you can put in the train data, what train it is, what type of train, what is the maximum authorized speed for this train, what the braking capability is, how long the train maybe is. Actually, I don't know what kind of data this thing all took and processed, but this is the way how the train knew things about itself and the system knew things about the train, more or less, so that it can operate properly. This thing we can see at least in two trains in the game. One is the HST, what we just drove with an earlier version, in a bit of a more sophisticated version on the 802 train, where we have some functionality in those buttons at any rate. And it would be great to have this system running on the Great Western Express line, or maybe if we get more of this main line, it would be even better. But so far on the trackside equipment is missing completely. You can't even see it if I'm not mistaken. So that is the class 802 from the Riviera line, and we typically get this thing here closed, right? This is open and this is the flap, and if you close it then it looks like this, and we cannot open in the train. This is also from the 802 where you can turn it on. Here is the isolation switch for the British Rail ATP. If you want this thing to do something and turn off the isolation light and turn on the button for on, then you have to switch this, and there is a second switch where you can switch between ETCS and the British Rail ATP, what is obviously mutual exclusive. What I'm not entirely sure is where is the temporary isolation switch for the ATP. Maybe also the TPWS temporary isolation also temporarily isolates the ATP. How does this thing work? What it can actually present to you. This is again the thing from the HST for a change. And you can see on the speed clock you have this full line of green lamps around from 0 to 140, and the system lights one of them steadily to tell you what is the permitted speed here at the moment. And if you don't have a target, then you can just see this is the ceiling speed that is at the moment controlled. You are allowed to go 100, train will control you versus this 100 maximum speed. If you're approaching a reduction in line speed, then the system will change and it will give you another indication, a different one. It will give you the target speed with the green lamps, but now it is flashing. So if it is changing from a steady green to a flashing green, then you know you have to slow down to the corresponding speed. So with the flashing green, you have to slow down to 40 if it is flashing at the 40 marker. So flashing green means target speed. And what are the yellow lamps or amber lamps for? This is for the release speed. We know that from ETCS and other train protection system that are only with an intermittent contact with the train, not a continuous contact. Then we sometimes need a release speed where the train can crawl up to the next beacon to get an updated information. Because otherwise we couldn't reach the train anymore. And here the thing is telling you that you are allowed to go 20 towards the signal. It does not give you authority to pass the signal, but it allows you to get close enough to the beacon and not be stopped by the speed supervision program on the train. A 3-digit display here that typically shows you 3 equal signs if the system is working normally and you're running the line and you're not supposed to stop at any signal. That reminds you a bit of the KVB system from the French trains, right? They're also using those dashes instead of the equal signs, not giving you any indication what speed it is controlling you against, but shows you the dashes that it is working. Here you get equal signs. The full supervision is in place and no signal at danger is at the moment controlled by the system. If you're running up to a signal at danger, you can get indications like this. .0 tells you that you have to stop at the third signal or the next signal but 2. So you will still pass 2 signals before you will hit a red signal. So typically you will still have the double yellow, single yellow, and then the next signal is red. The indication with .00 is the next step. You have to stop at the second signal from here. So the next signal, Bob 1. So you still have the single yellow to pass before you hit the red one. And this is the indication that tells you that you're approaching a red signal. You have to stop at the next signal. So much I was able to find out. And there is an isolation button. If the system is isolated, then it will light up only in the 802 in the game. This is a thing that actually works. You can select the brightness in the 802 for this system. Here is an indicator that shows you that the system is on and working, so system is active. Then you have a brakes button, and those buttons here can be pushed. They are indicators that can light up and can be pushed at the same time. This button will light up if you get a penalty brake, and it will flash as soon as the penalty brake is releasable. So if the system thinks it needs to apply the brakes because you missed something, then this button will light up. And it will start flashing as soon as you can push it to release the brakes and take over control again. The brake release button for that. And then there is a button for shunting mode, where you can pass all the balises without being stopped, but you will be limited to a speed of 20 miles per hour. It has a hinged cover, so that you don't accidentally push this button. And the same goes for this button, what is a pass stop signal button, also protected with a hinge button that will allow you, as it says, to pass a stop signal, not unlike the PZB override button in the German PZB installation or the Manövertaste in other train protection system. If you have the authority to pass the red signal, you can tell the system, I have the authority, and you can pass it. So this is more or less what the driver interface constitutes. Let's look at it, how it works in approaching a limit in line speed and a red signal. So full supervision mode. Oh, long. Warblock says, prior to joining the stream, I was watching a YouTube video filmed from the front of a Class 802. Coincidence that you're covering this today, after the electrification was completed by Maidenhead back in 17, from Paddington film down towards Hereford. ATP chimes loud and clear in the cab with at least one overspeed imminent at one point. Great. Good watch. Give us the link. ATP terminates when you branch off to Oxford from the Grey Western Main Line in the Didcot area. So great, Warblogs. Thank you so much for confirming this. You can probably not find this video if you're looking for ATP. Inspector says, I think I watched that too. Perfect. Then I can watch this too, and I should have watched it. Maybe you can actually answer some questions that I still have of this system. Yeah. What does it supervise? Permanent speed restriction as well as temporary speed restrictions. They can be programmed into the system as soon as they are out, and then they are controlled just the same way as permanent speed restrictions. We have our train running on the rails. I left out any track circuits that might be there because they don't have any significance for the systems. We have clear signals. We can run on line speed. Line speed is 100 here, then it drops to 60, then it increases to 70 again at this point. And the minimum installation for the ATP is we have one beacon with the machinery at each signal. So this signal has a beacon. This beacon has this signal has a beacon too. This beacon gives the train the information you have to slow down to 60 miles per hour in so and so many feet, and so at so and so many feet you can increase to 70 again, and then you will get the next beacon in a distant so and so one. And Warblogs cannot I'm sorry, obviously does not work with putting the link there. We will find the video is called London Paddington to Hereford Train Cab Ride 4K. Thank you so much. I will watch this afterwards and see what I got wrong or what I did not get wrong, because when I tried to get it out. I've found an old National Rail video here that you can find with this URL that actually introduces ATP and how it works, at least some aspects of it. So, running line speed on clear signals with the 100, you would get the steady green. Thanks, I forgot links in the streams are usually blocked. Yes, Unfortunately, they are. Thank you for trying anyway. You get the steady green at the 100, indicating that you can go at 100, and you get the 3 equal signs, indicating that the signals are all clear, and you're not approaching a red signal within the limit that the system can control. And then we have to use the functionality supervision of train braking to a target, because we have to obviously slow down from 100 to 60, and this needs to be supervised. Here at this point, this is XXX feet. Here the train needs to be down to 60. Typically we add a bit of a margin of error, and this is what the system does. It calculates a curve, the indication curve, at what point it will show to the driver that it is necessary to slow down, and then it will calculate the optimum brake curve. And we have seen this in a lot of systems just as well. Above that, typically if it is a static limit that is controlled 3 miles per hour above, in the brake curves it can vary. It calculates a second curve above the indication curve that is called the warning curve, and a third one that is called the intervention curve. We have our base, and above that the warning threshold, and then the intervention threshold. And at some point those brakes are effective. We run into the brake curve after first running static at this point, and this is called the indication point. And at this point the system here will start flashing at the target speed instead of showing steadily the limit that was valid up until this point. I'm not entirely sure, I couldn't make this out of the videos that I saw on the materials, whether at this point it is still showing you the dashes, or whether it is giving you indication where the target speed is also shown on those indicators. There seem to be some conflicting pieces of information out there. Maybe we can find this in the video if we look at it properly. And it gives you this blip. Those are the sounds that you probably hear in the video all the time, because it happens a lot. It sounds a bit like the sonar beep on a submarine. Boom, boom. Telling you that the system is showing a new indication. So whether equals or the limit is shown, the target speed is shown, I can't really tell you. I've seen both indications, but I don't know if they are used in this context here. And then the train starts to control you against those curves. And new material for CD Radar sound collections is quickly. Yeah, I won't imitate the warbler. Then, if you actually supersede the warning curve, so if you don't slow down, or if whatever the train speed is violating the warning curve, then you get a warbler sound that goes more like whoa, 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 and warning you that you are overspeeding. At the same time, those 3-digit thing here starts flashing. Oh, the penalty brake is too early. We have to come back to this. And the green light will go off. So you hear the warbler alarm, and the indication here is flashing if you are between the warning curve and the intervention curve. And if you also cut the intervention curve, then the train will apply a penalty brake. Not an emergency brake. It will not drain the brake pipe completely, but it will apply a full service brake application as soon as the speed is over the intervention curve. And you have to slow down below the warning curve again. Then you can recover and release the penalty brakes by pushing the brake button that should turn on steadily as soon as the penalty brake application happens. And if you are below the warning curve again, then it should flash and indicate you that by pressing this button you can release the penalty brake and take back control. And then if you're still between the above the warning curve, then you will hear the alarm still, but no penalty brake, and then you have to slow down your train. And if you are out of the warning curve again, then you will be good again. Woblox is Train Sim Classic, at least the Armstrong Powerhouse one simulates ATP on their HST add-ons very well. They should make one for Train Sim World. Ah, interesting. This is all the knowledge that I don't have about Train Sim Classic, where it works. Maybe they know whether they show the target speed in this connection or not. Anyway, as soon as you get to the point here, then you should get shown, at least if you are not above the warning curve, the new limit of 60 with a steady green light. Again, with one of those sonar blimp beeps sounds, and you should at least at this point be shown the equal signs again. When the limit increases, then at this point the green lamp switches from 60 to 70, still the equal signs, and also a sound. Same sound, but here to indicate that you can accelerate. What I don't know actually is whether it takes into account the length of your train, or whether you have to run the train's length like in Axis, or whether this system actually knows how long the train is and does not increase the limit until the train has run its length. This is a thing that I can't tell you at this point. Here we looked at the supervision of train braking to a target. Now we can look at what can we do if we have a static speed limit, like here before we get to this point or after. The permitted speed is also controlled with two curves above, the warning and the intervention curve, but they are not curved, so they are not actually a curve, but it is static, +3 and +6 miles per hour. So if you slide above your permitted speed, nothing happens. If you slide above the speed +3, you get the warbler alarm and the flashing, and if you slide +6 miles per hour above the permitted speed, then you will get the intervention, just like in the braking curve, with the same rules for recovery. And this also holds true for the maximum train speed. So if for whatever reason your maximum train speed is slower than the track speed, then the maximum train speed is controlled in that way. Now let's look how the system can be used for SPAD prevention. So far we have looked at the control of permanent and temporary speed restrictions. The British signaling system is quite unique in so far as that it does not have any kind of speed signaling. So if we want to do some SPAD prevention, then we have to rely only on the fact that we have to be at 0 miles per hour at the signal, or a bit before. Let's see how this is done. This is a typical approach: double yellow, single yellow, red. On 3 signals, 3 beacons on the way. And we want to supervise of train braking to stop, not to a target speed, or a target speed of 0 if you want to like this. And it will not surprise you that it is more or less a supervision to a speed of 0 with the additional indication of the signals, so that you know where you are. You're running 100, you get the indication like before, green steady light at the 100 and the 3 equal signs. Then this beacon tells you my signal shows preliminary caution, double yellow. What happens at this point? The green marker, if we are not at the indication point, is still telling you that you can go 100, but this indication switches from 3 equal signs to the .00, telling you that you have to stop at the next but one signal. And as always, you get the sonar blip. Then the train calculates the curves from 100 to a speed that allows you to stop in the red, not in front of the red signal, and calculates the warning curves starting with 3 and 6 above, and the intervention curve, and to end up on a certain speed and with the +3 and +6 in the end. It gets to the indication point. This is the point where we run into the brake curve, as we sometimes say. And at this point, you have the flashing green at the 0 marker. The 3 digits are still the same, because it is still true that you have to stop at the next but one signal. and you get another sonar beep. As soon as the train picks up the next beacon with a signal telling the train single yellow caution signal, nothing changes here. We are still the flashing green on the 0 marker telling us that we have to stop. And we get 3 zeros now telling us that we have to stop at the next signal again with a sonar beep. We're getting closer to the red signal. The indication stays the same. We have the target of 0 and the 3 zeros telling us that we have to stop at the next signal. Let's say the train is here. Will it control us to a speed of 0? No, it will not, because what is the problem? If the train stops here at a speed of 0 and the signal clears, the train will never know that the signal cleared, because we don't have a continuous connection to the system, but only an intermittent connection to the system at the next beacon. So we must allow the train to crawl up to the next beacon to get the information that the signal has cleared. And this is why the system only controls us to a certain release speed. And as soon as this release speed is reached by the train, this indication will switch from the flashing green 0 target to an orange or amber or yellow release speed indication. That can be something up to 50 miles per hour. How it can be a 0 release speed, don't know. Maybe the system can tell you to stay in place even though it is the release situation. It will also give you a sonar beep. And then it is up to the driver. Obviously, driver must not pass the red signal as long as it is red, but as soon as the signal changes, the driver can crawl up to the beacon, not violating the release speed, pick up the information from the beacon that the signal has cleared, and then the system will switch back to a green indication and will allow the driver to go back to line speed. Yeah, here in the example, it is at 20, the release speed, so the brake curve would control us to 20 plus 3 plus 6 afterwards. Release speed control. The 3 things, like we have in ETCS, ceiling speed control, target speed control, release speed control. We find that always as a returning concept, even if the ways of handling it are different. So this obviously is a bit of a problem because it slows things down. This is why it can actually be nice to have a loop there. Let's just imagine what happens if the signal clears at this point. Obviously the signal behind the train will be red and yellow, but this signal is cleared. In this situation here, the driver would have to crawl up to the beacon with a release speed of 20. This is okay, but what happens if the signal clears when the train is still here or in approach? Then obviously the driver would have to slow down the train to release speed, crawl up to the beacon before they can go on. This is definitely slowing down things. So what is nice if we can do an early release by loop. We cannot do wireless release via communication-based train control. So this is what the system has for that. An additional infill loop can be put here on the part where the train approaches the signal, so that the same information that the signal cleared will reach the train much earlier, and then the system will not insist on the driver slowing down to the release speed, but at the point it gets the information that the signal has given, it will jump up to line speed, and then the train can proceed and does not need to slow down to 20 wherever it gets the information. And this can, well, make things faster and is like a bit of a compromise if you don't want to wire the whole track like in LZB. You can at least wire the parts where trains are approaching red signals that tend to clear after a while. That is the main functionality of the system, as much as I understood it. What can it do else? What else can it do? Emergency speed restrictions. You remember from the video about temporary speed restrictions, like emergency speed restrictions are temporary speed restrictions that are implemented with very short notice because it is emergent and it is in an emergency. You will get the Daleks, those warning indicators, and the drivers will be told by fax rather than with the weekly operating notice. And here you can jam in a plug into your signal circuitry. Even before you installed and programmed the temporary speed restriction, you can punch in a plug with the emergency speed restriction, telling the train, as soon as it picks up the signal from that beacon, that here is an emergency speed restriction in place, deleting any target that there is, initiating at once a penalty brake as soon as the train picks up the information that there is an emergency speed restriction in the block that it is entering. It shows ESR. The penalty brake is immediately recoverable by pushing the button, but the driver is actually woken from their slumber, and now they can get in touch with the signal or whatever. And in this, supervision of signal indications and permanent speed restrictions is still in place. So this is more or less a quick fix for the gap in time between the necessity of installing an emergency speed restriction and for fully implementing the temporary speed restriction. Not in the game, but you can read it in the sectional appendix. Interesting thing, super interesting thing. You actually put in a card in the computer wiring here to achieve that. We've always talked about full supervision. What is partial supervision? If the ATP system runs on the train, but we don't have on-track equipment, then the system is just like ETCS level 0 or very close to it, supervising the maximum train speed, so the authorized speed for this train with the 3 and 6 miles per hour things. It might be indicated with the 125, what is the highest speed that this train can go on this line. You can see it on the HUD, this indication, if you turn on the ATP system in the game, that it is probably controlling your speed of the train to 125. I've never tried if there is an intervention. We can try it later when we run the 822. Maybe it does that. In this mode, we have no supervision of signal indications and only selected speed restrictions. If we have, for whatever reason, temporary transponders on the track, then it can supervise them. Otherwise, without the wayside installation, it cannot supervise any of that kind. Shunting mode, we've covered that a bit before, is a special mode of operation of the system. You have to push the blue button, obviously only with authorization, with authority. Then the system will control you to 20 miles and will not supervise any signals or permanent or temporary speed restrictions from what I have read. Pass stop signal, this is what this button is for. It probably overrides the SPAD command from a beacon, so you can pass the beacon even though the beacon is telling the train, my signal is red. Bro, what's up? Why do you want to pass here? Then you can pass it so that you can pass one single, just like with the temporary, with this override button for the TPWS system, so that you don't get stopped. What it does then, whether it controls you to a speed of 40 or 20 or whatever after passing the signal, I don't know. I could not find out what it does then, because this is something I cannot really try in the game, probably what it does. What you can find in the sectional appendix is that if you have to pass more than one signal at danger, then you have to temporarily isolate the system. Or is a special mode of operation again. What else does it do? And Warblock says, if you check Armstrong's most recent showcase of the HST with the ATP, it would amaze you, I would think. It's a bit more in-depth with setup contrary to Train Sim World. I think the title on YouTube for this Train Simulator Classic HST MTU pack, or the second recent video on their channel, 26 minutes 19 seconds in for ATP setup, feature and operation, including ATP data entry. Oh, that is cool. ATP data entry, I did not cover that because we don't have any information about that, so I will definitely look at that. I did not know that Train Simulator Classic had this. But good thing to know. Then we can maybe have a follow-up and see what happens there. It's a bit sad that all this stuff is borrowed in Train Simulator Classic and not really making its way into Train Sim World. We have a rollaway protection, and this is actually one of the little things that I have found implemented in Train Sim World, that if you switch your reverser to neutral while the train is running and the system is on, then it will show you ROL and initiate the penalty brake that is recoverable when you're standing. So this is like the ETCS rollaway protection. Fault indication can happen with E for recoverable and F for non-recoverable faults with a number. Is that simulated also in Armstrong Powerhouse Train Simulator Classic stuff? Like on the expert versions with fault codes. With recoverable fault, you can typically still use the system. With a non-recoverable fault, you would have to turn it off completely, isolate it completely before you can use it again. And then there are some indications that I'm not really entirely sure, or maybe we can actually clear this up after looking into the Armstrong Powerhouse or this other video that you mentioned. When the system is actually telling you temporary speed restriction or permanent speed restriction, in what context, I don't know. I've seen those indications somewhere, but I don't know under what circumstances it does that. We've talked about this, not entirely sure when the system is showing you a target. Maybe if it is the most restrictive target and there is no signal a danger in the area and it is only controlling the approach to this target, that it will show. Maybe only below a certain threshold of speed limits. When it is showing you SPD, it's probably short for speed or speeding or whatever. Not so much likely the German Sozialdemokratische Partei that is meant here. Also a thing that I'm not entirely sure, but I've seen this, I've seen a system showing this. Still something to work on and to work out, and I think this is actually the end of my presentation at this point. Thank you so much for watching and for all the input with the Armstrong Powerhouse stuff and the 802 video. And this is where we're going now, to the 802. Yeah. I'm checking their manual currently. So the manual is probably also openly accessible. Gotta get the sound on again for the game. So here we are on the 802. It is switched to diesel mode. We don't have a panto up. Here is our magic speedometer. We can increase or decrease the brightness. It is isolated at the moment. Let's switch it on. This one I cannot switch to ETCS. It will stick to British Rail ATP. Turn on all the things. System reacted insofar as the isolation light turned off, more or less, and the on button turned on. I cannot use the stop signal override button. I could use the shunt button, but it doesn't do anything. Oh, it does. It actually shows an H here for the shunt mode, and I can turn it off again. At least it is reacting here. We could try if we actually get control to 20 miles if we turn it on. And the brakes release button actually works as well. Let's just get the train set up. Full headlights. It's green. And to be honest, guys, I would like to drive this train as far as we can with the panto up. The process for switching electric and diesel and the 802 is covered in a couple of videos. The weird thing is that it is actually working easier than it should work, I think. At the moment we should have the diesels on, as you can hear. When I'm simply switching to electric, the diesels are turned off automatically. I press the panto up. System shows me that the panto is up. But if we look at our train, it does not look as if the panto is up. Funny thing is, we can drive it anyway. Let's see if we get control to shunting. No, it does not work anymore. What did we change? Do we need to switch it on? Ah, we need to switch it on when the reverser is in neutral. Forward, now shunt mode is on. Let's see if the train can go. And now look where our pantograph is all of a sudden coming into existence. Pick! There it was. It has been there all the time. And we will see whether we get controlled to 20 miles per hour in shunt mode. No, it's not doing any... Oh, it's doing anything. It actually stopped us. We did not get the warbler before, but it stopped us when we reached the 26. Brakes lit up. I could push it to release the brake again. So shunting mode is partially implemented, as it seems. Good. Turn it off again. And on again. And what? Electrical dovetailing suspect. And it's Wi-Fi, yes. And Woblock says in the manual, when ATP self-test is completed and the on button is flashing, you must confirm your train's data in the ATP data entry unit. This allows the braking curve to be calculated for ATP. Once data entered, ATP ready appears on the data entry box display, not in the trains world obviously, because our data entry box is behind this flap here. And ATP setup has been successful and you are able to obtain a brake release. Alright. That makes sense. Oh my god, you are pressing CIFA even when you're so... and reading chat. Yeah, yes! You are true. You are right. This is what I'm doing. That's because the reverse is to forward. Actually, the vigilance device would do that. Anyway, let's go. But now we can't go anymore, can we? Aha. Works again. Had to release the brakes again once more. The other thing that the system does here in the game is if you switch to neutral while the train is running, it shows this R or L for the rollaway protection, implements the brakes, and then you have to release them again as soon as you're standing still. So some sort of a rudimentary implementation is here. Here in the game, the line is electrified only up to a certain point, where we have to switch back to diesel. You can do this by stopping the train. What I have not been able to do so far is to do a proper switch over with a running train, except for the easy way. Can actually switch to diesel by pressing the yellow diesel button, and that should work before you run out. If you actually run out from under the catenary, you will get a traction lock that I have not been able to release so far. Maybe there is a way, but I have not been able to do that. And ATP modes full, partial and shunt are simulated as well, detailing everything covered in the presentation. That is nice to know, and sad that we don't have it in Trains and World yet. Maybe we get an Armstrong powerhouse add-on to this route. The thing is, the train here has a better installation than the track. Because we probably don't have the track installations at all. Let's see at the next signal, or at any signal where we can actually go 125. CD Radar, should we bother DTJ for an expert mode versions as Warblocks? Yes, please do. Do bother them. And CD Radar asks, why are you asking me? Why not? Why should he not ask you? So, what I can show you is we have at least a visual representation of those tube-style beacons. Those are the beacons that I was talking about. What we don't have is this typical orange tube thingy that protects the wire connection, but those are the beacons that I was talking about all the time, and they are sitting here at the signal, two of a kind. So they are at least visible. If they can do anything, I have no idea. And CD Ray says, I haven't played Trains and World in a few months. Did I not just see firing it up while I was in the stream? Yes, I was looking for a Paddington bear. Yeah. At least the bear got you into the game. Yeah. Again, you can see the improved signal visuals, I think. Increase to 125. To the right we see fighting vehicles from the cargo line military DLC. Cars are bumping around nicely. Yeah, and if you look at the HUD, you can see that ATP is on and it is controlling us to 125, what is maybe the partial supervision of our maximum authorized speed of 125. Yes, I showed the HUD. What are you asking me, CD Radar? I'm switching now to diesel mode before I do anything else. Panto went down. And let's see if our diesels actually started. Looks like it. There goes my 100k points. It is for the whole stream, CD Radar. It is for 100k points. And then he says, and a very important question: do you like Doppelmayr or Leitner more? I have no clue what you're talking about. Once more. Unfortunately, this traction status screen does not really tell you what is happening here on your train traction system. So, at least as it is at the moment, the 802 can switch between electric and diesel mode just by punching the corresponding yellow button. But if you run out from underneath the overhead catenary, what would happen soonish here, without switching to diesel first, you catch a traction lock that I have not been able to release from so far. Suspension physics look nice here on the bogies and the cars. Fly over for the Heathrow connection. And now we're out. We have the gantries, but there is no overhead catenary giving us any juice. So probably the overhead catenary that we had before should not actually be working. I suspected the TEA service from Heathrow Cargo Line 1 with the tank cars. So I wonder if we are actually controlled to 125 in this mode. We would have to accelerate beyond 6 miles over, so to 131. And that is not so easy with the diesels. Especially on a more or less flat ground. Approaching slow. Maybe I just let it run and see how fast the train will get and whether we can create a reaction from the system. But it does not really go beyond the 125. We would need to do this with the electric traction probably. Well, then skip it. $131 is the limit before ATP intervention, I read. Yes, this makes sense with what I concluded. This is 6 miles per hour above the limit of 125. What is the maximum authorized speed for this train? But I doubt that I can actually accelerate this train beyond the 131 here with my diesels. So we won't find out if the trains in world installation is actually interfering then. Or intervening is the verb, right? Wow, look at this smoke. This is ozone killer. Spectre says Greta is not amused. Well, this is why they are working on the electrification here, as you can see. It's just that it's not easy being green. It is for the Great Western Railway. They are green, even dark green. And I really like those trains with this dark green livery. They look so much better than the blue and magenta ones. Even though typically I prefer blue over any other color, but this one is super nice. Back to it would have been a cool name for a scenario, yeah. A difficult one. Says, why is there that purple cushion here on the window? Yeah, I actually wondered. You can't rest your hand there, it's too far and high for that, and it probably won't help much. Rest in case of a crash. Probably not, no. I have no idea what it is good for. Maybe it's just a rest for your plush mascot that you can put there. This is probably an EU directive. According to TSI 7.2 2026, we need to have a purple cushion in the cab. See the rails, and I wonder where you could see that. Warblocks, well, these are Japanese A trains, must be a design of theirs. Maybe this is where the mascots are sitting. It's the Hello Kitty rest. Oh, what was it? What's the one that was in Bullet Train? The Momonga. And see, there is this for a mascot. There is the table behind it. Here. There. This one. That's the casing for the housing for the camera, is it not? Behind it. That depends on the direction you are looking at it. Yes, and I think this is the housing for the camera. Or whatever is housed there for whoever. Single yellow. And we are back at Reading. Do you have a mascot in your cab, City Radar? Hello, Mr. Signaler. Allow us to enter. Signal is still red. Wait for the signal to change. Well, if you insist. But we are the class 800. We can't wait. Inspector asks or says that he wonders why the town Maidenhead is called Maidenhead. I have no idea. And Warblock's approaching a red. What was the speed over the TPWS loops again? I think this totally depends on where they are installed. It is not always the same speed that they are controlling you. The overspeed sensors. Depends on line speed, depends on length of overlap and stuff like this. And where the overspeed sensor loop is installed. And City Radar says, according to Wikipedia, Maidenhead's name stems from the riverside area where the first new wharf or maiden height was built. As early as Saxon times. I see. Inspector says Iron Maidenhead. That signal red again? No, it is double yellow. That makes sense. So it is. If you say so. Or is ours? No, ours is the double yellow. Ours is the double yellow. That's the train that we drove in our first service, probably. Here's the 30. I knew that was a 30. Reading. Finally, we are at Reading. With a rear clear marker. Would have to read it up in the sectional appendix what the rear clear marker is actually for. And he asks again, what are you reading?
This is Reading. This is a Great Western Railway service to Reading.
Yes. The announcement for those services are always great. And now we're shunned out of... Now it's actually time for using the shunt mode. Don't know if it is necessary in this setup when we're passing a red signal. But at any rate it makes sense because we are from Reading to Reading in City Races, from Reading to Writing. Well, Inspector, he asks, not that far, is it? Depends totally on your pathing. If you go... Take it slow. Take it slow. If you go via Melbourne, then from Reading to Reading is quite far. From listening to talking, says the reader. That I won't read. No, you are on strange. So, this is where we can stable our train. Finally, there is a little red signal. Careful, we don't want to spot a SPAD here. Wait for a moment. Yeah, kudos again for this remaster, the Great Western Railway remaster. It is really a great one. Paddington Station is super cute now. And maybe someone can extend it to Oxford, like in Trains in World Classic, and implement the ATP that we talked about today. Thank you so much, guys, for your input. I will look at those 2 videos. Maybe I can close some gaps in my understanding of the system, and maybe at some point we will have it in Trains in World. For now, this was it for this week's stream. Thank you so much, and have the greatest of times. See you around.